Let's talk some more about this tonight with the front bench. With me tonight, former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant. He's the CEO now of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is here, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Good to see you tonight. I appreciate making the time for this. Brian, I'll start with you, just picking up where those clips left off. How important do you think it is at this juncture to hear from Pierre Poilievre, to hear from the Prime Minister and have sort of a concerted message from them like the one they delivered last night?
Well, we can't sort of ignore also the very powerful interview you just had. I mean, what horrendous events. I mean, I don't know what other word could possibly even come close to encapsulating what Maya, the person you were interviewing, was describing. And I know off air, all of my fellow colleague panelists were moved and shaken by her remarks. At a time like this, it does matter, of course, to have political leaders on the same stage, saying relatively the same message, whether that be sort of from Canada's allies, which we have seen, so more on the international front, and of course here domestically as well. And it is important for that type of symbol to happen. It sends a message, of course, throughout Canada and throughout the world that unequivocally the government and the opposition and other political parties are standing together. And of course, that makes it all that much stronger when Canada joins other allies in sending the same type of message. So I do think it's important. I think both of their messages were relatively similar. And I think that is the right approach to take. And I happened to see your interview with Minister Joly, and she spoke of the need for nonpartisanship, and I couldn't agree more. And obviously, it's nice to see that happen, given these terrible circumstances.
I think, Tom, where the messaging is concerned, there isn't a lot of partisanship. There's obviously, and we'll talk about this in a moment, some back and forth on how the government can best aid Canadians who are in Israel and need help right now. But on the message of kind of who they're condemning and who they're supporting, there was a lot of unification. Your thoughts on that?
And it was refreshing because you didn't get these, oh, this is a cycle of violence type arguments as if there were really two sides here. This is a pure, abject, horrific terrorist act, butchery, horror. And this is what we're dealing with. You know, right after it was created in 1948, Israel was attacked literally the first day on all sides by its neighbors. And there have been other times in its history, Vassy, when it's faced existential threats. And I think Israel has a pretty clear idea of what it has to do to meet existential threats. And I think that for once, anybody in the world who was thinking, well, you know, there are issues that have to be discussed, and there are. There's a history that has to be dealt with, there is. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is Hamas, according to all the available information, supported and enabled by Iran, and carrying out the most horrific attack. I mean, there are details to this that are starting to come out that just are unbelievable. So anybody who thought that it was a fantasy when Israel said, no, these countries like Iran, and you know, the purpose of a group like Hamas is to try to destroy the state of Israel and the people in it. Anybody who still had a doubt about that should have had that doubt removed by the events of the past 3 days.
There are 800 Canadians as of yesterday, Minister Joly, Lisa said, who have contacted the embassy for help. Her advice at the time, I'm just going to play quickly what she said at the time when I asked her if they were considering sending over some flights, and then I'll get your input.
So right now, the advice is to shelter in place. So we'll continue to follow the local authorities' security advice. At the same time, we're looking at what can be done and working with allies on this very issue.
When you were in cabinet, Lisa, you oversaw a department that would be heavily involved if there are going to be flights sent over in that endeavor. How difficult do you imagine that is or will be?
Hard to be put in the place right now. I do believe, though, fundamentally, that if a government really wants to do something, a government can really do something. And we've seen that happen in the past. It may take a little bit of time to pull it together. So I don't think that the minister's off on her recommendation to shelter in place. Picking up on what Tom and Brian said, though, look, we can all universally condemn what happened because it's absolutely atrocious. Where the parties are going to have to make sure that they keep their heads about them is the resolve of their statement that Israel has a right to defend itself. This is going to be long. There's no reason to think that this is going to be over in any short period of time. And the longer it goes on and the more Israel asserts its right to defend itself, it's going to cause a lot of friction within Canada, and it's going to cause friction in the party. So I hope they hold the resolve, and I hope they stay united on this very important issue.
We've seen a little bit of that, comparatively very small amount, Rob. But for example, in the Ontario NDP, I see that there is an MPP who has kind of put out a statement in that vein, and now there are various Jewish advocacy groups calling for her to be removed from caucus. There's a whole controversy over the way in which Ontario CUPE, the leader of that union, has positioned himself on this. Your thoughts on how that is unfolding?
Well, I think, Vassy, this is such a horrendous tragedy, a terrorist atrocity, and I think a lot of people, the social justice warrior kind of set, is seeing this as an opportunity to discuss the two-state solution or things in the West Bank. I've been to the West Bank. I haven't been to Gaza, but I think a lot of people should be reflecting right now. They shouldn't be tweeting about their views on this, that, and the other thing. And Sarah Jama, the NDP MPP, is under scrutiny right now. My paper tried to talk to her today. We haven't been able to talk to her. I don't even know if the leader of her party, Mart Stiles, has been able to discuss this statement. I don't really know also why a provincial member of parliament feels the need to put out a statement talking about quote-unquote Israeli apartheid. I just don't see how that helps the situation. I thought it was good last night that the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, and then here in Toronto you had Premier Doug Ford and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Mayor Olivia Chow at the same rally, supporting Israel and the Israeli people in this dark time. And yet, you have these others that are they just don't seem to be able to read the room.